Hello and welcome. I'm Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UFO, UAP news from everywhere and anywhere. Today's podcast is on Dorothy Izatt. Who is Dorothy Izatt, and what is she known for?
Has regular contact with extraterrestrials, and her outrageous accounts have passed every scientific test. Doug Bruckner has the story of her alien encounters.
Watch very closely, because if this video is what it's purported to be, you're looking at an alien in a spaceship.
You can clearly turn their heads.
Already studied and authenticated by some photo experts, it's just one of thousands of dazzling images from what's been hailed as the greatest UFO story ever told.
I've been researching UFOs for 35 years, and I've never seen anything like it.
It's an extraterrestrial mystery that's confounded everyone, from psychiatrists to scientists and respected UFO investigators.
But they have absolutely no idea as to what it is.
Just as remarkable as the pictures themselves, the woman who took them.
Professors, doctors, lawyers, anything you can think of, they were coming to do different tests on me.
Her name is Dorothy Izatt, the world's most unlikely UFO contactee. A 75-year-old great-grandmother who says she's been communicating with visitors from other worlds for 25 years.
I've asked them to come closer, and they'll move closer. And I'll ask them if I can film them, if they give me permission to film them.
These pictures are the result, showing everything from alien beings to spaceships to masses of glowing orbs in the sky and inexplicable flashes of light. All contained on more than 350 reels of film this spry granny shot with her little Super 8 camera from the balcony of her Vancouver apartment. She remembers when it first happened, on an otherwise ordinary afternoon back in 1974.
I looked up in the sky, and here was this enormous craft that looks like a huge gold, like diamond-shaped thing up in the sky.
This is without a doubt the most remarkable piece of footage she shot.
It was when the aliens showed up.
It's an image that appeared during one of Dorothy's routine sky watches just recently.
And then I noticed that in the window were a couple of aliens in the window. So I said, oh dear, I can't see it, the light's so bright. I said, I need to film you. I said, can you turn the lights off the ship? And I can film you. And they did. The lights go off. The aliens are there.
And believe it or not, like all of Dorothy's footage, this has been scientifically tested and declared genuine, or at least not faked.
There's not a lot that we know about it, but we know that it's real.
California UFO researchers Monica Ward and Peter Guttilla have thoroughly investigated the Dorothy Izatt phenomenon and are now compiling a book of their findings.
There is a spiritual world, and there is a non-spiritual world, a material world, and so forth. What Dorothy has done is she's bridged the gulf between the two.
Meanwhile, Dorothy simply calls her ET friends life beings, who she says come from diverse parts of the universe to impart a simple message to mankind.
No one wants to listen to it because it's so simple and it's so easy. It's Love. Just love.
The Dorothy Izatt case is fascinating. I first watched the documentary on her, Capturing the Light, years ago. It's a documentary by Frank Longo about her, and it shows an elderly woman, an amateur photographer and housewife, who seemed to have some type of gift for capturing what appeared to be otherworldly beings and strange craft in the sky. There didn't seem to appear to be any hoaxing going on, and there were several eyewitnesses to the occurrences. What struck me, and what I've never forgotten, is that towards the end of the documentary, Dorothy's daughter is being interviewed in the kitchen by the film crew. And as she's talking, a red light appears in the kitchen window right behind her. It starts zigging back and forth, and it eventually morphs into what looks just like a spaceship. And the film crew didn't even notice until afterward when they were going over the footage. Check it out.
Before you know it, it's been 5 years now, and I'm exporting to everywhere: Switzerland, Syria. Got my first order for Russia this year.
And the family's noticing now.
We just haven't slowed down this year.
There it is. Turns into this spaceship right here. There's Dorothy. Family members. They're watching the footage back. This is the family watching the footage of the interview that had been previously recorded. Okay, so I thought we'd take that frame by frame since it was so quick. You can see how it begins as a small red light, which you can see right there. But okay, here's a still of the red light being seen through the kitchen window as Dorothy's daughter is being interviewed. Here's a close-up of that light. Okay, there it is again. And there's nothing back there. The family members were very skeptical and they went back there afterward during the day. And there's no road back there. It's a wooded area. Now it's morphing into what looks like a spaceship. Okay, you can see it there now. A little bit more of the outline. There it is again. Right there. I'm showing these stills because the video is so quick and I couldn't use much of it. Okay, you can see the lights underneath the craft right here. So it's nothing outside because that's all wooded area back there. There are no roads or cars. And there was nothing going on inside that would have caused that reflection. It's probably one of the better pictures of the craft. There it is, your typical cylindrical or oval-shaped UFO. That's what it looks like. And that's what the family members were reacting to when they were watching this interview on their TV. There it is again. You can see the lights underneath. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background information on how all this started. Back in the mid-1970s in Vancouver, Canada, Dorothy Izatt was a housewife and a mother. And one day she was making food in the kitchen when she started to have a strange feeling that she was being watched. When she looked out the window, she saw a giant diamond-shaped craft glowing in the sky. She started to see them on a regular basis, but no one in her family believed her. They claimed that what she was seeing were airplanes or other objects of natural or human origin. Because of this, Dorothy decided to try and prove the existence of these very unnatural objects she was seeing in the sky. One night, a light appeared in the sky above her. She used a flashlight to attempt to communicate with it, turning the flashlight on and off. As she slowly swayed the light back and forth, the object mimicked her actions and swayed across the night sky above her in the same motion. Eventually, Dorothy started recording the lights on her Super 8 camera. Upon reviewing the film in detail, she found that they were occasionally emitting some type of burst of energy. These strange pulses would send zigzagging streaks of light across the sky, but it happened so fast that it was only visible on a few frames of film. This suggested to Dorothy that these beings were trying to communicate with her. Eventually, she accumulated over 25 hours of film and became well known in small pockets of the UFO community. An investigator went to her house to analyze some film, and when doing so, began to hear a small high-pitched buzzing sound in his ear. Dorothy heard it too, and when the two went outside, they witnessed a large metallic craft floating over her house. Dorothy claimed that these beings, or NHI, could communicate with her telepathically. They told her that the universe is teeming with biological life and that many of the entities that populate it look like or are similar in appearance to human beings. There is also footage she took of what appears to be alien greys piloting a ship. I believe I have that picture here. There it is. And you can clearly see a mouth, nostrils, and eyes, and a head. This is perhaps another NHI. She claims she could see these creatures through windows, lining the side of a spacecraft in the sky in front of her. Telepathically, she asked them to dim the lights on the ship so she could see the pilots better. So at first it was just a glowing orb. When she asked them to dim the lights, she was actually able to take a picture of them through their spacecraft window. In total, Dorothy has accumulated over 20 hours of footage and thousands of photos. And have to admit, I found her case to be fascinating and really thought-provoking, and I thoroughly enjoyed the documentary, Capturing the Light, that I mentioned before. And then I went on to read a book by Peter Guttilla called Beings of Light, The Amazing True Story of Dorothy Wilkinson Izatt. Upon reading the interviews and information in that book, it started to slowly erode the faith I had built in researching this case. Parts of the story are fairly straightforward, but as Dorothy begins to open up more to the author, she talks about weird encounters, and they become more and more outlandish, including a flight where she gets on a UAP with NHI and goes to Coney Island for the day. Okay, so now that I've shown a clip and talked a little bit about the documentary Capturing the Light, which at first made me very interested in Dorothy Izatt's story, I'd like to move on to the book by Peter Guttilla that goes into more detail and actually is mainly written in the voice of Dorothy Izatt. Contact with Beings of Light, The Amazing True Story of Dorothy Wilkinson Izatt by Peter Guttilla. Okay, so on page 20, Dorothy says that they contacted her and only she can see them due to her, quote, total being and character. So she's already admitting that others can't see what she sees, but somehow, even though others can't see what she's seeing, she's able to capture these NHI on camera. By page 22 in the book, Dorothy writes about how depressed she is because her family and friends don't believe her. She also says in the following 4 pages that she felt the light beings, as she called them, were angelic in nature and were conditioning her for understanding, end quote. Dorothy, in the next few pages, wants proof, so she asks the NHI for proof. So she borrows her husband's super 8mm camera. On page 24, Dorothy writes about Professor Hynek, who's famous for having been involved with Project Blue Book. He comes to visit her and sees her footage. Here's a picture of Dorothy with Dr. Hynek himself. So he comes to see her films and pictures. He actually encourages her and bolsters her confidence. On page 33, Dorothy actually is tested by a clinical psychologist, and the psychologist says that she's perfectly all right. If anything, she's above average intelligence. By page 34, word is spreading, and she gets a lot of visitors and attention. On page 45, Dr. Hynek asks a photographic expert to try and reproduce her pictures, which they can't do. The expert actually says that it would be too expensive to reproduce the footage that Dorothy has. At 59, it's realized that nowhere on the planet does anyone have anything with as, quote, as much photographic proof of ET contact as Dorothy Izatt. And I'm going to read a quote from page 81. Another important point to remember is that Dorothy Izatt has a live-action movie film record of her experiences. From the beginning, she has never expected anybody to take her word for anything. The camera lens doesn't lie, hallucinate, or exaggerate. Therefore, the films and photographs add cogency to the whole of what Dorothy reports. However subjective some of these stories may seem on the surface. This was, is, and remains to this day the unique difference between Dorothy Izatt and many others who lay claim to similar personal experiences, end quote. And I guess that's Peter Guttilla talking there. I'm just going to give you highlights from the book. Okay, so on page 96, which is chapter 15 in the book Beings of Light, Dorothy asks the light beings why others don't see what she sees. And they telepathically, they tell her that the eyes have to be conditioned to see them. Also, light beings connect with our, or quote, one's light within. The light within is the true meaning of my pictures, Dorothy says, to make people aware of light within and how it must be made to correspond with the light up there, end quote. And apparently, Dorothy is also aware of abduction stories that go around conspiracy circles in the UFO community, because on page 99, she says that, quote, she's heard of abductions, but that it was never that way with her, end quote. So she's always had positive experiences. In the following chapter, which is probably one of the chapters that stands out for most, at least for me, at the chapter 16, the title of this chapter is Coney Island. And this is where a 7-foot blonde-haired NHI or ET appears outside of Dorothy's bedroom window and invites her for a UFO flight to Coney Island. And they're beamed up to a triangular-shaped craft. And apparently these NHI, Dorothy says that they all looked ordinary. They could pass as human except for their height. And while they're at Coney Island, the ET's triangular-shaped craft, it's a triangular-shaped craft, by the way, stays in plain sight, hovering above them. And Dorothy questions the 7-foot blonde NHI as to why anybody else wouldn't notice. And apparently, the answer is that most people are too preoccupied with what's going on around them, and not only not notice the triangular spacecraft above them, but they take very little notice of the 7-foot NHI that Dorothy happens to be with in the Coney Island amusement park. So the 7-foot blonde-haired NHI with a younger daughter, it seems, that he brought with him, and Dorothy make the rounds around Coney Island amusement park and enjoy themselves for the day. And then she's brought back home. There are times also in the following chapters where she sees lights or orbs, which I'm pretty sure that Lou Elizondo said that he saw orbs in his home as well, except Dorothy Izatt claims that she sees little beings encased in these orbs or balls of light. And she's not the only one that sees these balls of light. Her sister Esther, on page 111, one night also sees the orbs in their bedroom, one night that they happen to be sleeping in the same bedroom. On page 115, in chapter 19, entitled Little Lights Lost, benevolent green NHI appear at the foot of her bed. They take her aboard a large craft with many human-looking beings. And she uses a rod to float around through the walls and up into a spaceship. She's brought up into this huge spaceship just to experience a conference that's going on there, and she sees all different types of NHI. She's then taken back to her bedroom. On pages 121 through 127, a light being, one of her NHI, appears in her bedroom. She accompanies it into outer space, and she's shown a huge golden ship that's supposedly, quote, for the Queen of Heaven. Afterward, she's brought the NHI bring her to an undersea city. Dorothy also claims that she was brought many times by the light beings into space in order for them to show her, quote, how the universe really is. And at the end of that chapter, on page 127, she says, and I quote, "That's why they've allowed me to film them, so others can witness visible proof that there is more to life than what's on Earth." She also says that ETs are concerned about being attacked. Quote, "What I've been told is that people have attacked them in the air and on the ground many times," end quote. She says on page 135, ETs are here because they fear nuclear explosions will break the membrane that separates their dimension from ours. Dorothy says on page 139 that she's often asked how other people can learn to photograph NHI as well. And her answer is that they have to raise their consciousness, and that light beings are made of love and light and communicate through our consciousness. Towards the end, the final part of the book, chapter 22, or the epilogue, is all in the author's words. And on page 148, the author, Pete Guttilla, claims that while visiting Dorothy, a, quote, light appeared in the center of the room and shot straight up through the ceiling. The author also says that Dorothy led them to a terrace outside her apartment where they filmed an, quote, enormous, silent, triangular-shaped object that passed overhead. So I just want to show some of the pictures that were included in the book and were not included in the documentary Capturing the Light. Okay, so this is from the cover of the book. This is probably the most outstanding picture that, or one of the most outstanding pictures that Dorothy Izatt took. And I believe it's called Tending to the Children. And you can see a larger female-looking NHI leading smaller or NHI-looking children. Well, I'll just read the caption here. An angelic being seems to be guiding children into a corridor of light. This image appeared in a bright burst of blue-white light. It was shown to the author in its moving form during the 2000 visit with Dorothy Izatt. So Dorothy showed this to Peter Guttilla during his visit. And this is a more enhanced version. It was carefully analyzed, and the shading and contrast of the above photograph was highlighted by researcher and graphic artist Lucy West. She produced this rendering. This is the original. Here's a picture of Dorothy Izatt the year that Peter Guttilla visited her in 2000. This is right before she died. She died in 2021. She lived to be about close to 100. This is another incredible picture that she took. It's a structured object that appeared and a beam of light projected from below. A smaller object, bottom left, descended the beam and moved forward towards Dorothy's position. The smaller object flew back and forth, crossed the sky several times before ascending the light beam and re-entering the larger object. Okay, I guess this is a picture of an NHI that she saw in shadow form or silhouette form, and a sketch version was made here. This is pretty cool. Let me see if I can rotate this. Okay, so this is pretty cool. This is a picture that she took of alien hands, and if you look closely, you can see that there are only 4 fingers here. Alien hands from an example of Dorothy's remarkable interior footage filmed while inside an otherworldly craft. This still above, this still shows the arms and hands of an extraterrestrial. The right hand indicates only 4 digits with what may be webbing between the fingers. The alien's left hand is on what seems to be a control instrument. And this is a sketch of the same photograph based on computer analysis of the image. Here's another picture that she took of a craft. Dorothy has many frames of this derby-shaped object. On her request, quote, they turned around several times to give her different angles to photograph. Here are a couple of other craft. And while filming the object in the above photograph, Dorothy asked, quote, the light is so bright, can you turn them down so I can see what your ship looks like? And almost instantly, the object darkened, leaving only the disc-shaped UFO outline of the craft here. And this is a picture of an extraterrestrial, or NHI, doing something to the outside of his craft. Okay, so a window appeared on the side of a disc-shaped craft. In the window, several entities appeared. One was nearer the window and held what seemed to be a clipboard-like object. And this is a picture that I showed earlier. And this is a sketch of the, quote, lead entity based on Dorothy's description of what she observed at the time of filming. Okay, so this is a picture of a ball of light that hovered when Dorothy asked, quote, what do you look like? There was a bright flash and a, quote, face appeared to the right of the bright ball, right there. And this is a sketch or rendering of the face. So I'm going to show a picture of the author of this book, Beings of Light. His name is Peter Guttilla. And at the end of the book, Peter Guttilla shows a lot of concern because Dorothy Izatt isn't being taken very seriously by the UFO community, and especially the science community. And he says, and I quote on page 49 of the book, the problem is the prevailing attitude of researchers who have shown no motivation to set up a full-scale project to investigate the, quote, Izatt Phenomenon, end quote, in order to establish its relevance and importance. He goes on to say on page 150, her experiences are corroborated by film evidence, yet reactions from researchers in possible positions of influence has been surprisingly lukewarm, end quote. So I guess he expected more of a positive reaction, more acceptance. Yet I think that a lot of her stories afterward didn't help her case. It didn't add to her credibility when she said that she was walking through Coney Island with NHI, for example. The Dorothy Izatt case is a fascinating case, but it also raises a healthy amount of questions about how the footage was taken, the camera it was taken on, and the reliability of the eyewitness testimony. Was Dorothy Izatt just an attention seeker, a master hoaxer, or a real-life experiencer? Or maybe all three.
This light appears. They said, what we're showing you is to prepare you.
This
seeing things, you're hearing things, they're not normal.
For her to be seeing it as regularly as she did, I found that really hard to rectify.
And if I didn't see it, it's not there. That's all there is to it.
They all thought I was imagining it. So I said, I've got to prove it. And then started filming.
You can't even do that. You can't make it up.
Oh my gosh.
Mrs. Izatt is presenting us with an entirely different view of UFOs, extraterrestrial visitation, and what it means to mankind.
We're not easily swayed by things. We're really moved.
I'm almost getting goosebumps talking about it.
This is hard physical evidence.
Amazing. Irrefutable proof. The smoking gun proof.
The more you look at this footage, it does affect you as a human being. Be prepared. You're going to change looking at this stuff.
What I'm experiencing is I'm sharing it. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, take it or leave it. Dorothy Izatt obviously was a very lovely woman. Could this be a case, though, of someone that saw something in the sky maybe several times, got some attention, and then hoaxed some of the footage and stories to try and get more attention until her stories got so elaborate that they teetered on the edge of being unbelievable? I don't know. I do know this, though, that Dorothy Izatt was very charismatic, and you can tell by the children that she raised that she was an upright citizen, probably told the truth most of the time. You have to take her advanced age into account. She was near 100 when she died in 2021. I, for one, want to extend my condolences to the Izatt family for losing such a warm, kind-hearted woman. She was also entertaining, let's face it. Those pictures are incredible. Not only are they a form of art, but they seem to contain some form of NHI evidence. My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Thanks for listening to my podcast.